Yo, what's up guys? Today we're going to be talking about patch 6.1. It's a pretty large patch and new season is coming along with it. I believe tomorrow is when the season ends, and then there will be the new season coming 4 hours after that season ends as normal. And so we're just going to go through the patch changes, talk about the main kind of changes, what it is that you guys should be looking out for, how this will all affect the meta, that type of thing. So first thing is Ryze is coming out April 17th. So again, in a day, basically coming out. I don't think I'll be playing a lot of Ryze, but you know, I'm sure there'll be a lot of videos on Ryze, and we'll definitely mention how Ryze feels in the meta, making a meta report video a few days after the patch. We have a new wild pass. Again, I'm not going to go over a lot of the non-gameplay related changes, the game mode, stuff like that. When it comes to the ranked season, as it says here, it's starting on April 18th. So yeah, in 2 days. And it ends in July. So again, 3 months, obviously, like as normal, as pretty much every patch is. They're adding some new ranked rewards, things like that. Again, not going to go through all the specifics because it's basically just a bunch of boring stuff. But one thing that I do think is interesting is the legendary ranked updates. And so they're changing the names of the legendary ranked things. So now you still have it being called legendary commander as the first rank, but then it's called legendary master, grandmaster, and challenger. So they're kind of trying to make it seem more related to the actual rank system, because a lot of people don't really play legendary ranked, and part of that is because they just like the names of it. People don't even know that Vanquisher or Immortal or whatever else is even a thing. Like, they don't even know what that means. So they kind of wanted to change that. Legend is still the final rank though, as normal. And then they're also adding the Galio's Aegis thing basically to the legend rank system, except when you get an S or an A rating, you'll now get more legendary energy, which I assume is legendary score, like points. I think that's what that is. And then they also made adjustments, so now if you've ever hit 1000 champion score on a champion, you can play that instead of it having to currently be at 1000. You're getting a new bonus as well to welcome players, so marker loss protection for your first loss, which I guess is nice. And then also your legendary rank tier and your final rank tier in the previous season now give you legendary point bonuses at the start of the new season. So basically just some legendary rank changes, nothing really crazy. And then here, basically the gist of these champion score changes is that the base champion score that you can get from legendary rank tiers in the lower legendary rank tiers is lower, and then the higher ones are like the legendary ranked factor is increased, which basically what that is like your champion score increases by a percentage based on your legendary rank. And then there's some other things. Again, we won't go too deep into all of these because that's not what most people really care about. But overall, basically just some changes to the weighting of that. And then also master versatility level 4 and 5. So you guys know we were going for level 3. Now they're adding 4 and 5. Maybe we'll try going for that, but honestly, I don't think we probably will. And then another really, really important thing to kind of note is the anti-cheat. So they're adding embedded Vanguard to combat cheating in Wild Rift. So basically, hopefully map hacking and those types of things will go away, which is really nice. But there's a thing here you can click on to read more about it. But basically the anti-cheat's going to hopefully be better. Hopefully people are going to start getting banned more often. They're supposed to be adding it where if they detect someone banning, nobody loses anything from the game and that person instantly gets banned. So that'll be pretty cool as well, so that hopefully we don't really have map hackers anymore. Then adding some new customized buttons for like controls, stuff like that. Again, we won't go too deep into that. But that's pretty much it for like the kind of changes that aren't super champion related. Some pretty cool things, especially the anti-cheat, I think is definitely the biggest thing that is really cool. But now we'll go into the champion changes. Okay, so we have A-Soul. So A-Soul is getting a buff to the first ability, basically doing more damage. And then the dash, or like the flying thing, will do less damage level 1. The same damage level 2 with your first ability. And then your first ability when you're flying will do more damage at level 3 and 4 of your flying ability. Does this really change much for A-Soul? To me, not really. He's always been a champion that's really good at melting through tanks and bursting them down, and that's still really what he's going to do. He's going to have really good sustained damage with his first ability buff, but he's still going to struggle into these mages that are going to become really strong for the reasons we'll mention later on in the patch with the itemization changes and all of that. So I still think he's really going to struggle into most ranged champions, most mages. And yes, if the enemy pick a bunch of tanks, he's a good pick, but generally speaking, I still feel that A-Soul's not going to be a very good champion in the latest patch. Okay, next up we have Irelia, who is getting a health buff on her base stats as well as an armor per level buff on her base stats, so more health and armor per level. The passive is getting more base damage, especially in the early game, and then the ultimate is going to do more damage at level 2 and level 3. So overall, this makes her a bit tankier overall, which is really nice because usually the struggle with Aurelia is you go in, you get CC'd, you get blown up if you don't get your second ability off properly, and you really struggle with scaling. So this helps her scaling a bit, and her scaling with her ultimate's going to do more damage and then have that early game damage as well on the passive. So overall, I do think this helps Aurelia out quite a bit. However, Aurelia as a champion just doesn't function super well right now. In the meta, she's always been really kind of weak within the last couple patches, couple seasons really. And I do think that this definitely makes her a lot stronger, but I still think she's just going to be kind of middle of the pack to even a little bit below because she still struggles into a lot of different types of champions in the meta. But she's pretty good into mages, and mages are becoming stronger. So this buff, alongside the fact that mages are going to be really good, and she's pretty good into mages, means that I do think she's actually going to be a solid counter pick in mid lane into these types of mage matchups, but she's also going to struggle into a lot of different matchups as well. Okay, after that we have Ziggs, who's getting a buff to his passive, where it's now going to have 5% more AP scaling on the empowered first ability. Then his second ability is going to do actually a much better execute. So at level 1, the satchel charge now executes at 20% instead of 10%, and then it's going, you know, up every level as well, from 15 to 22.5, then from 20 to 25, and then 25 to 27.5. That's actually really big because that means that if a turret is 600 health, you will kill that turret even at level 1. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm pretty surprised by that buff of the execute, but it's pretty big deal, I would say, on the second ability. And then the third ability is also getting a 2-second lower cooldown at all levels. So alongside the mage changes with all of these buffs, I think Ziggs is going to be solid. Ziggs also likes playing into squishier champions, and with mages coming into the meta, he does pretty well into a lot of these mages because he just outranges them. So it's like in Orianna, for example, it's really hard for Orianna to kind of do much into to Ziggs because Ziggs will just zone him off, and similar to a lot of these different mages that don't have really long range. So honestly, I think Ziggs might be a pretty underrated champion in this patch with these buffs and then with the changes to mages, definitely. So if you're looking for a champion to play, Ziggs might be one that you might want to look into. After that, we have Volibear, who's getting a buff to his passive where it's going to do more damage as it scales up. Instead of going from 11 to 60 base damage, it's going to go from 11 to 80 now. Alongside that, his second ability is getting bonus damage, and then also even more bonus damage when it's in the frenzy form. And then the ultimate is also getting more base damage on level 2 and level 3, and more AD scaling by 10%. So overall, basically a lot more damage going to be put into Volibear's kit. I think this is going to be really strong. Like, I do think Volibear in Baron lane and in jungle is a solid champion, not insanely like OP right now, but decent. And with these changes with a lot more damage, it probably means he's able to do a lot better in a lot of matchups and just overall has more kind of carry potential. So I think Volibear might be a champion that kind of creeps up into the meta as one of the stronger bruiser jungles. Like right now, the strongest bruiser jungle is definitely Wukong, and then after that you have champions like Vi that are really good, and I think Volibear might find himself in that kind of Vi level of champions, where he's definitely a really strong bruiser. So if you're looking to pick up a new bruiser jungle, especially one that's really good in the early game, especially on level 5, Volibear definitely looks like a solid one for that after these changes. Okay, then we have a bunch of changes to mages. So we're basically just getting base movement speed buff on a bunch of the mages, which is definitely interesting. I mean, mages getting a buff overall this patch. Then we have a new item, Bandle Fantasy, which is 3,000 gold, gives you 80 AP, 7% magic pen like most AP items do, 300 mana, and then 20 ability haste, and you can see what it builds with here. Basically, the way the passive works is if you damage someone with an ability, you spawn a trap that does damage after a small delay. It'll do damage around the people's feet. And then if you get multiple traps like over a short period of time, it'll do a bit less damage, or only 20% damage. And so overall, I think this is probably a mage item. Like mages, I wouldn't say it's going to be that good on like AP assassins or stuff like that. Probably mostly like zoning mages for zone control and that type of thing. I don't know if it's really going to replace pen items like flat pen items like Infinity Orb or Soul Stealer early game. So it might be an item you go 4th or 5th item. I don't think it's going to be a first item on most champions. It's still going to be Ludens or Malignance, as we'll talk about in a second. But overall, you know, I'm definitely going to have to test these items to really tell you guys, right? So, you know, pay attention to future videos and stuff for me to give a better opinion. But right now, this doesn't look like a crazy strong item. It just looks like a decent item that some mages might utilize well. I'm definitely going to have to test that out. But then we have probably the most anticipated item, which is Malignance. And that one also going to cost 3,000 gold, going to give you 75 AP. with 7% magic pen, 400 mana, and 20 ability haste. And then this has some interesting passives. So your ultimate's going to get 20 ability haste, so it's really good on champions who really care about their ultimate. And then you also have the passive where damaging a champion with your ultimate will burn the ground beneath them for 3 seconds, dealing magic damage, which is equal to, some amount of damage. I don't need to read that. It also reduces their magic resistance, and then the burn radius increases with damage, reaching a maximum radius when it hits 800 damage. So this item overall going to be pretty interesting, I would say, as well. I think it's really good on again, champions who utilize their ultimate and champions who kind of play around ultimate setup, like using those to kind of set up a lot of plays and stuff. So champions like maybe Lissandra, Ahri, those types of champs. I think Kassadin might be able to utilize it decently well as well with the ultimate ability haste. So definitely going to be testing it on Kassadin. That's probably going to be the main champion I'll be testing it on. But yeah, Ahri, Lissandra, those types of champions definitely can like it. And then we have a new enchantment called Hextech GLP-800. I don't know what GLP stands for. That's a weird name. But anyways, it's going to be 500 gold. What it's going to do is fire a spray of icy bolts that explode on the first enemy it hits, dealing magic damage to them. And the enemies hit are also slowed. The slow decays over time. And yeah, overall, this one, I guess, is going to be good on mages. Basically would be good on mages that don't need a defensive spell. So if you're really looking for like high burst damage, I would say, again, setup mages like Ahri, Lissandra might utilize it better because they have ways to already peel themselves. Whereas a squishy low mobility mage like Syndra or Orianna, or even Victor, they may still need a stasis or a quicksilver enchant in most games, just because they don't have as much self peel. But anytime that the enemy don't have a lot of dangerous things and you want that type of extra damage, I think it's going to be really good, again, especially on Ahri, Lissandra, that type of thing. Okay, then we have some additional changes to boots. So boots of mana. Now when you have boots of mana, your attacks and abilities will deal more damage to minions. So mages are basically going to get better wave clear. Then boots of lucidity now have mana regen on them. So for the mana boots, I think the mana boots are still just the thing you build on basically every AP champion, and obviously going to be stronger now that they have some good wave clear. Boots of lucidity, I still think suck. I still think they're pretty much the worst boot in the game. They're pretty awful. I don't really recommend building it on almost any champion. Maybe there's going to be 1 or 2 supports. Maybe some enchanter supports will do it now, but that's really going to be it. And even then, I still think that the boots of mana are usually better. Then we have Ryze getting a buff/nerf. So the health you get from Ryze going down by 50, the AP you get is going down by 5, but now it's getting that 7% penetration that most other items have on it. Overall, I don't really know how the math works out, to be honest, on the loss of AP versus the pen. So I'm not really sure about whether or not this is a buff or a nerf or how it is overall. So, really not sure on that, frankly, but I guess we'll see as the patch goes live. Then we have some rune changes as well. So sudden impact is now getting an additional thing where once you hit level 5, you're going to deal an additional 10 true damage. And then once you get level 9, you're going to get an additional 20 true damage. And then you get 10% movement speed for 1.5 seconds after you deal the damage. Other than that, you're still going to have it where you damage an enemy champion, you deal some true damage after using a dash or anything like that. But yeah, now with the levels, it gets a bit stronger. Overall, maybe makes it a bit better on assassins. I would definitely say the movement speed thing especially is kind of interesting on level 9. So I'm interested to maybe try out sudden impact on some more champions that play for high burst damage that have some dashes or stealth or that type of thing. Then Transcendence, kind of similar thing, where now instead of it being level 1, 6, and 11 that you get the bonuses, you now get the bonuses at level 1, 5, and 9. And the only difference is the bonus at level 9 is going to be 10% reduction of your abilities cooldown instead of 15%, but still very, very similar overall. Then that's going to be that for the items and for the runes. And then we have some gameplay changes, which are going to be buffs. So now buffs will evolve over time. So at 7:30, the red and blue buff will now become empowered, and then at 12 minutes they'll become evolved, so they basically get stronger. I don't actually know exactly what empowered and evolved mean in terms of the actual strength, so maybe you guys know that. Let me know in the comments if you do know. Also, the gates now at 10 seconds is or it only takes 10 seconds after using it for someone else to be able to use it instead of 15. And in the mid game they moved where they are a bit, so you land a bit safer, which I guess is nice as well. Similarly, during the mid-game now, after you use the gates, you get 3-second movement speed that decays over those 3 seconds. And then the gates can only be used by allied champions during the mid-game. So I guess your gates could have been used by the opponents before? I didn't actually know that. was the case, to be honest. Oh, it's like, yeah, no, I know what it means now. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because the gates in the mid, they used to be able to be used by anyone, but now only your teammates can use them. Okay, so that's actually interesting too. I don't think that will change much, but it's interesting. And then Scorpion, I think a lot of people will be happy about Scorpion being nerfed because a lot of people hate Scorpion. I don't hate it, but maybe that's because I'm just better than you guys at the game. I'm joking. Sort of. Not really. So basically the changes to the Scorpion is now when you're using it, you get revealed, which is kind of cool because it makes it more dangerous to do it, and you can get targeted easier. I think that's a cool change. Then it's getting less turret damage as well, so it's just going to do 80% instead of 100% damage to the turret, so it's not going to one-shot your turrets anymore like it used to, which was pretty crazy. And then when you're in range of it, the turrets will now prioritize Scorpions, similar to how turrets prioritize a cannon over a small minion. So now they'll prioritize the Scorpion, so it won't screw over your turret as much and get tanked for by all the minions, which I also think is not a bad change, certainly. And then they adjusted the stats a bit to balance the fact that it's going to be targeted by the turret, so I assume that means it's going to be a bit tankier, but I don't know for sure. And then those are all the changes for the actual rank stuff. I'm not going to talk about PvP, because if you play PvP, I hate you. Not actually. Anyways, that's about it for the patch. Pretty sizable patch, definitely. Really, really good for mages. If you're a mage player, you're probably very happy. If you're playing other champions, maybe you're not so happy. Overall, I like the changes as a whole. Obviously smaller in terms of nerfs and buffs because of the fact that they're changing so much, but I think most of these changes are good. I definitely rate the patch like an A-. I think it's a strong patch. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the patch, and I'll see you in the next video.